You'll fall into misery until you witness my fortune. After cheating and divorce, my wife took all my assets. But she never imagined what was quietly waiting for her next. My ex-wife Natalia got the house, the cars, the bank accounts, and even the dog in the divorce. In front of the judge, with a triumphant smile I'll never forget, she whispered in my ear as she signed the papers. I hope you enjoy living on the street, Diego. Now you'll see what real misery is without me. She said it with so much venom that several lawyers present turned away uncomfortably. I just nodded, signed the last document, and walked out of that room with a backpack containing my clothes and my laptop. What she didn't know is that I'd been preparing for that moment for the last 8 months. My name's Diego, I'm 38 years old, and until 2 years ago I thought I had the perfect marriage. Natalia and I met in college 15 years ago. She was studying business administration and I was studying systems engineering. We got married as soon as we graduated, full of dreams and plans for the future. During the first few years, everything seemed to work. I got a job at a tech company and Natalia dedicated herself to networking in business circles, though she never formally worked at anything. She'd say she was building contacts and waiting for the right opportunity. Over time, I bought our first house, a modest but comfortable apartment in a good part of the city. Then came the car, then a bigger one for her, because she needed to project success at her social gatherings. I worked long hours, doing freelance projects on weekends to maintain the lifestyle Natalia considered appropriate for our social position. She was in charge of decorating the house, organizing dinners with her friends, and posting perfect pictures on social media of our supposedly ideal life. Everything started to change 3 years ago when I got an offer to lead a major project at my company. The job required constant travel and late meetings. Natalia complained at first. She'd say I was abandoning her, that I never had time for her. I tried to make up for it with gifts, expensive vacations, a membership at the most exclusive sports club in the city, but nothing seemed to be enough. The complaints turned into constant reproaches, the reproaches into fights, the fights into a cold silence that filled every corner of our house. One October night 2 years ago, I came home early because a meeting was canceled. I found Natalia on the balcony talking on the phone with someone. Her tone was different, soft, intimate. I heard fragments of the conversation. I can't wait to see you tomorrow. He's never home anyway. This is different. You really understand me. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. When I walked onto the balcony, she quickly hung up with a clumsy excuse about a friend with problems. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I hired a private investigator. Over the next 6 weeks, I received detailed reports with photos, schedules, locations. Natalia was having an affair with Rodrigo, the owner of a chain of luxury gyms. They'd meet 3 times a week at a downtown hotel. The photos were irrefutable. I felt devastated, betrayed, but also strangely relieved. Now I understood why our relationship had become so cold, why she always found excuses to avoid intimacy with me. When I finally confronted her with the evidence, Natalia showed no remorse. Instead of apologizing or explaining, she attacked me. And what did you expect? You're never here. Rodrigo makes me feel alive, desired, important. You just give me money and expect that to be enough. Her words hurt me more than the betrayal itself. I asked her to leave the house that same night, but she refused. This house is as much mine as it is yours. If anyone's leaving, it'll be you. For the next few months, we lived under the same roof in a silent war. I slept in the guest room. She kept seeing Rodrigo without any pretense. Finally, after 3 unbearable months, I told her I wanted a divorce. Natalia smiled with an expression that chilled my blood. Perfect. When this is over, you won't have anything left. I'm going to make sure you lose everything you've built. She hired the most aggressive lawyer in the city, a man with a reputation for destroying his opponents in divorce cases. I hired a more modest lawyer, a young woman named Elena, who'd just opened her own practice. Natalia scoffed when she found out. That rookie, Diego, you've really hit rock bottom. My lawyer's going to tear you to pieces. The divorce process was brutal. Natalia's lawyer presented documents showing I'd been an absent, negligent, emotionally distant husband. Testimonies from Natalia's friends described how she suffered from my lack of attention. Experts valued all our assets, every piece of furniture, every appliance, every bank account. Natalia demanded the house because she argued she'd turned it into a home with her decoration and design work. She demanded both cars because she needed to maintain her professional image. She demanded half of my savings and a monthly alimony for the rest of her life because she'd sacrificed her career to support mine. My lawyer Elena advised me not to fight too much. Diego, you have a good income. You can recover from this. If we fight every point, the process will drag on for years and cost you more in legal fees than what you're losing in assets. She was right, but every concession hurt, seeing how Natalia was getting everything I'd built with my work, my effort, my sleepless nights. It was heartbreaking. During those months of legal battle, something changed in me. The initial sadness transformed into a cold determination. One night, while reviewing my finances to prepare documents for the trial, I realized something. For years, I'd been working on freelance projects, developing software for small businesses. One of those projects was a business management application I'd created almost as a hobby. I had registered it in my personal name, not as part of the marital assets, because I developed it before getting married, and it never generated significant income during the marriage. That app had started to get attention in specialized tech circles. 2 medium-sized companies had contacted me asking if I'd be willing to sell the license or develop custom versions. I hadn't given it much thought until then, but now I saw an opportunity. I contacted those companies and others. I presented improved demos, negotiated licensing agreements. In a matter of 4 months, that app nobody considered valuable started generating steady income. Simultaneously, I kept a low profile. On social media, I posted photos in cheap apartments, eating at cheap places, wearing simple clothes. I let Natalia and her friends think the divorce had financially destroyed me. Meanwhile, the licensing contracts for my software grew. I opened new bank accounts where I deposited that income, far from any scrutiny of the divorce process. It was all legal. It was income after the separation of assets, but she didn't need to know. Finally, the day of the final hearing arrived. The judge reviewed all the documents, listened to the arguments from both sides. Natalia looked radiant, dressed elegantly, sure of her victory. Her lawyer presented a summary of everything she'd receive. The house valued at $350,000, the 2 cars for a total of $80,000, half of my savings which amounted to $70,000, and a monthly alimony of $2,500 for 30 years. The judge approved the agreement. Natalia signed the papers with a triumphant smile. I signed without expression. When the hearing ended, as we were leaving the room, Natalia approached me. I hope you enjoy living on the street, Diego. Now you'll see what real misery is without me. Rodrigo and I are going to live in your house, drive your cars, and every month I'll remember this victory when your alimony check arrives. I just nodded. Be happy, Natalia. She laughed. Oh, I will be. And you can keep writing your little computer programs to survive. Maybe in a few years you can afford the rent on a decent room. She walked away on her lawyer's arm, laughing with her friends who were waiting outside. I left through another door where Elena was waiting for me. Are you okay? She asked. Perfectly, I replied. Now the interesting part begins. Elena smiled. She was one of the few people who knew about my app and the contracts I'd secured. Your ex-wife has no idea what's coming, right? I shook my head. Not the slightest idea. That night, I slept in a small furnished apartment I'd rented during the divorce process. It was basic, functional, nothing fancy, but it was mine. And on my laptop were the contracts that would change everything. The next day, I'd start implementing the second phase of my plan, the one Natalia never saw coming. The first few days after the divorce were strange. I woke up in that small apartment, without the luxuries I'd grown accustomed to over the years. The place had the basics, a bed, a desk, a tiny kitchen, and a functional bathroom. But there was something liberating in that simplicity. For the first time in years, every object in that space was completely mine, without the pressure of keeping up appearances or meeting others' expectations. Natalia wasted no time celebrating her victory. 3 days after the divorce was signed, she posted photos on social media of her and Rodrigo toasting with champagne in what used to be our living room. The caption read, "New beginnings with the man who truly values me. Goodbye to toxic relationships and men who only know how to work but not how to love." The comments from her friends were predictable. You deserve the best. You're finally with someone on your level. That loser didn't know how to value you. I didn't comment. I didn't react. I just went on with my routine. Every morning I'd get up at 6, make instant coffee, and sit in front of my laptop. The licensing contracts for my app kept growing. A national electronics store chain had signed a deal for $100,000 annually to use a customized version of my software. Two logistics companies had made similar deals for $90,000 each. In total, my monthly income had gone from the $8,000 I earned at my old job to nearly $30,000 a month. But I kept a low profile. I continued to wear simple clothes, ate at cheap places, used public transport. On social media, I'd post occasional photos of simple meals with captions like learning to live with what's necessary. Natalia would share these posts with her friends, laughing at my apparent decline. "Look how the great Diego ended up, eating instant noodles," she wrote once. Her friends replied with laughing emojis. What she didn't know is that every time she posted something mocking me, I was closing another deal. The motivation her contempt gave me was pure fuel. Every insult, every taunt, every sarcastic comment pushed me to work harder, to perfect my app, to find new clients. My lawyer Elena kept me informed about Natalia's activities through legal contacts. Apparently, she and Rodrigo had started living together in the house just a week after the divorce. A month after the ruling, I got a call from Elena. "Diego, I need to tell you something. Natalia has filed an additional lawsuit." I felt a knot in my stomach. "What kind?" Elena sighed. "She's demanding that you disclose all your current income." Her lawyer argues that if your income has significantly increased after the divorce, she's entitled to a review of the alimony. I leaned back in my chair, smiling. "Can they do that?" Elena answered cautiously. "Technically, yes, but only if your income increased extraordinarily and is related to work or projects that began during the marriage." "Is there something I should know, Diego?" I explained the whole situation. The app, one developed before the marriage, the new contract signed after the legal separation, the separate bank accounts. Elena was silent for a moment before replying. "This is brilliant, Diego. Legally, you're in a solid position. That income is post-separation of assets and comes from intellectual property you developed before the marriage. But we have to be very careful how we handle Natalia's lawsuit. If we reveal your current income all at once, she might look for other ways to attack you legally." We spent the next 2 weeks preparing the defense. Elena contacted intellectual property experts who confirmed that my app and its licenses were not marital property. Meanwhile, Natalia posted on social media about her new life of luxury. Photos at expensive restaurants, weekend trips to the beach, designer clothes. Rodrigo appeared in many of those photos, smiling, his arm around her. The comments always included some indirect reference to me. This is what it means to be with a real man. Finally, someone who knows how to treat a woman. What caught my attention was the frequency of these posts. Every 3 days there were new photos of extravagant spending. I did some quick mental math. The lifestyle Natalia was showing off required at least $15,000 a month. The house had maintenance costs of $1,500 a month. The cars needed insurance, gas, maintenance. She was getting $2,500 a month in alimony from me. Where was the rest of the money coming from? I discreetly hired a forensic accountant to review Natalia's finances. What he discovered surprised me. Natalia had taken out 3 credit cards in her name immediately after the divorce. In 2 months, she'd racked up $65,000 in debt. Additionally, she'd taken out a personal loan of $30,000 using the house as collateral. Rodrigo, for his part, wasn't as successful as he appeared. His gym chain had serious financial problems. 2 of his locations had closed the previous year due to a lack of profitability. This information was pure gold. Elena and I decided to wait for the right moment to use it. Meanwhile, my income continued to grow. An international e-commerce company contacted me to develop an enterprise version of my application. The contract was for $500,000 in the first year with guaranteed annual renewals. I signed the deal in my small apartment, sitting at my cheap desk using my 5-year-old laptop. The irony wasn't lost on me. 2 months after the divorce, the court date for Natalia's lawsuit to review my alimony arrived. She appeared in court dressed in a designer suit, expensive jewelry, perfect makeup. I arrived in a modest suit I'd bought at a cheap department store. When our eyes met, she looked at me with obvious contempt. Rodrigo accompanied her, sitting in the front row of the gallery as a show of support. Natalia's lawyer began his argument. "Your Honor, we have reason to believe that Mr. Diego has been hiding significant income. We request that he be ordered to disclose all his bank statements and employment contracts from the last 6 months. The judge, the same one who had presided over our divorce, looked at me with a neutral expression. Mr. Diego, do you have anything to declare in this regard? I stood up. Your Honor, I'm willing to present all the requested information. I have nothing to hide. Natalia smiled with satisfaction. Her lawyer also seemed pleased. Elena remained calm, trusting our strategy. The judge ordered a 15-minute recess for us to present the documents. In a private room, Elena pulled out a thick folder. Are you sure about this, Diego? Once we reveal these numbers, there's no turning back. I nodded. It's time for Natalia to see the full reality. Elena smiled. Then, let's get ready for the show. When we returned to the courtroom, Elena presented the judge with 3 meticulously organized folders. Your Honor, here are all of Mr. Diego's bank statements, contracts, and income statements from the last 6 months. The judge began to review the documents. His expression remained neutral, but I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. When he got to the contract figures, Natalia's lawyer asked for permission to review the copies. We handed them over without objection. I watched him skim the pages, his initial confidence gradually turning to confusion. Natalia whispered something to him urgently. He looked up at me, then at Elena, processing what he was seeing. The judge spoke first. Mr. Diego, I see here that your current monthly income is approximately $80,000. That's significantly higher than the $8,000 a month you declared during the divorce proceedings. Can you explain this increase? I stood up. Your Honor, all of this income comes from software licensing contracts that I signed after the legal separation of assets with my ex-wife. The software in question is an application I developed 10 years ago, before I got married, as a personal project. Elena stood up to add, Your Honor, we have documentation proving that this application was registered in Mr. Diego's name 3 years before his marriage to Mrs. Natalia. During the marriage, the application didn't generate significant income, so it was never considered marital property. The current contracts were negotiated and signed entirely after the legal separation, using intellectual property that belongs exclusively to Mr. Diego. The judge studied the additional documents Elena presented. Natalia's lawyer tried to object. Your Honor, we argue that Mr. Diego used time and resources during the marriage to develop this application. Therefore, the profits should be partially considered marital property. Elena responded firmly. Your Honor, we have time logs showing that Mr. Diego worked on improvements to this application exclusively during personal hours, weekends, and holidays, without using any marital resources. Furthermore, Mrs. Natalia never showed any interest in this project. In fact, there are emails where she refers to this application as that waste of time. The judge asked to see those emails. Elena presented them. They were messages Natalia had sent me years ago, complaining that I spent too much time on my computer with projects that will never make money instead of taking her to dinner or buying her things. In one of the emails, Natalia wrote verbatim, Your stupid application is never going to feed us. Stop wasting time with it and get a better paying job. I saw Natalia turn pale as she heard those emails read aloud in court. Rodrigo shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The judge continued to review the documentation in silence for several minutes that seemed like an eternity. Finally, he looked up. Based on the evidence presented, I find that Mr. Diego's current income comes from intellectual property he developed before the marriage and which was disdained by Mrs. Natalia during the duration of the same. The contracts were negotiated after the legal separation. Therefore, this income doesn't qualify for an alimony review. Mrs. Natalia's lawsuit is denied. The bang of the gavel echoed in the room. Natalia stood up abruptly. This isn't fair. He was hiding this during the divorce. The judge looked at her sternly. Ma'am, I suggest you maintain order in my court. Mr. Diego wasn't obligated to disclose personal projects that weren't generating income during the divorce proceedings. What he did with his intellectual property after the separation is his own business. Natalia looked at her lawyer desperately, but he shook his head. There was nothing more to be done. As we left the court, Natalia intercepted me in the hallway. You're a damn liar, Diego. You were planning this the whole time, weren't you? You made me believe you were ruined while you were hiding a fortune. I kept my voice calm. I didn't hide anything, Natalia. You got exactly what you asked for in the divorce. What I did after we legally ended things is not your problem. She took a step toward me, her face contorted with rage. This isn't over. I'm going to find a way to take what's mine. Rodrigo came over, putting a hand on Natalia's shoulder. Honey, let's go. This guy isn't worth your time. He looked at me with contempt. Enjoy your money, loser. Natalia's better off without you anyway. I nodded. I'm sure she is. Take good care of her, Rodrigo. Credit cards don't pay for themselves. I saw his expression change slightly. He didn't know I was aware of Natalia's debts. That night, as I had dinner in my apartment, a simple meal I'd prepared, I got a message from Elena. Congratulations, Diego. It was a clean victory, but be careful. Natalia doesn't seem like the type of person who accepts defeat easily. I replied, I know, but I'm prepared for whatever comes next. The weeks following the hearing were tense. Natalia increased her activity on social media, constantly posting about her perfect life with Rodrigo, but something had changed in the tone of her posts. Before, they were pure celebration and mockery of me. Now there was a defensive undertone, as if she were trying to convince herself she'd made the right decisions. True wealth isn't measured in money, but in love, she wrote in a post next to a photo with Rodrigo. The comments from her friends were less enthusiastic than before. I continued with my discreet routine. My app continued to gain traction in the business market. An international consulting firm contacted me to develop a specialized version for their clients. The contract was for $800,000 distributed over 2 years. Additionally, 3 tech startups wanted to invest in my software company, which I'd formally registered 2 months after the divorce. Offers were arriving in my email almost daily. I decided it was time to make some visible changes in my life, but gradually. I rented a better apartment in a modern building with a gym and security. It wasn't ostentatious, but it was comfortable and professional. I bought better quality clothes, no flashy brands, but well-made. I started frequenting a cafe near my new office, where other tech entrepreneurs worked. There I met interesting people. I established genuine connections based on shared interests and not on superficial appearances. One Saturday afternoon, while working at the cafe, I heard a familiar voice behind me. Diego. I turned around and saw Marcella, an old college classmate. I hadn't seen her in years. Marcella, what a surprise. She smiled broadly. I can't believe it's you. I've been following your app in tech circles. Everyone's talking about it. I blushed slightly. It's had a good reception. We sat down to talk, and I discovered that Marcella now ran a tech startup accelerator. During our conversation, I mentioned my recent divorce in passing. Marcella nodded with understanding. Natalia, right? I remember her from college. She was always very socially ambitious. I smiled bitterly. That's a diplomatic way to put it. Marcella shrugged. Honestly, Diego, I always thought you deserved someone who valued your brain as much as your wallet. Natalia never seemed interested in what you actually did. Those words resonated with me for days. She was right. Throughout my marriage, Natalia never showed genuine interest in my work. She attended my company events only when they were fancy enough to post pictures of. She never asked about my projects, never wanted to understand what I was passionate about in technology. To her, I was simply a means to finance the lifestyle she desired. Meanwhile, my forensic accountant kept me informed about Natalia's financial situation. Things weren't going well for her. Her credit card debts had grown to $90,000. The personal loan she'd taken out using the house as collateral was generating considerable interest. Worse, Rodrigo had closed another of his gyms due to financial problems. Apparently, he'd been funding the ostentatious lifestyle they showed on social media with his own debts. A month after the alimony hearing, I received an unexpected call from an unknown number. It was Camila, one of Natalia's best friends during our marriage. Diego, I know I have no right to call you after everything, but I need to talk to you. Her voice sounded tense. I agreed to meet her in a neutral place. Camila arrived at the cafe looking nervous. After ordering coffee, she got straight to the point. Natalia's going to kill me if she finds out I'm here, but my conscience won't let me rest. She leaned forward. Diego, she's in serious financial trouble. The debts are huge. Rodrigo is broke too. She thought he was rich, but it turns out he's worse off than she is. They're both living on appearances and credit cards. I asked her why she was telling me this. Camila sighed. Because I know Natalia. When she feels cornered, she'll do something desperate, and I think her next move will be against you. She explained that Natalia had been researching ways to attack me legally, looking for any loophole to claim a part of my new income. She's obsessed, Diego. She can't accept that you're better off without her. I thank Camila for the warning. That same night, I spoke with Elena about strengthening my legal protections. She suggested meticulously documenting all my income, expenses, and contracts. If Natalia tries anything, we need irrefutable proof that everything you have is the result of your post-divorce work. 2 weeks later, Camila's prediction came true. Natalia filed a new lawsuit alleging I'd committed fraud during the divorce by hiding potential assets related to my app. Her new argument was that although the app existed before the marriage, the significant improvements I made during the marriage increased its value. Therefore, she was entitled to a portion of the current income. Elena reviewed the lawsuit carefully. This is more serious than the last one, Diego. We need solid proof of when you made each improvement to the app and with what resources. We spent the next 3 weeks reconstructing the complete history of my application. I found commit records and code repositories showing the exact dates of each update. I recovered old emails where I discussed ideas for the app with colleagues. I gathered bank statements proving I never used marital money for development. While we prepared the defense, something interesting happened. A tech journalist contacted me to do an article about successful entrepreneurs who emerged after personal crises. I hesitated at first, but Elena convinced me. Diego, public opinion matters. If Natalia is trying to paint you as a fraud, you need people to know your real story. The interview was published in a major business and technology magazine. The article told my story, how I developed an app as a personal project 10 years ago, how I'd improved it in my spare time for years without it generating significant income, and how finally after a difficult divorce I'd managed to turn it into a successful business. The journalist highlighted my work ethic and perseverance. The reaction was overwhelmingly positive. Business people and entrepreneurs shared the article on social media with supportive comments. My app received more attention, which led to new contracts. But the most satisfying part was reading comments from people who'd gone through similar divorces and felt inspired by my story. Natalia, of course, didn't react well. She posted a vague message on her social media about people who lie to play the victim and ex-partners who rewrite history to look good. But her friends, many of whom had read the article, didn't respond with their usual support. Some even commented things like there are always two sides to every story, and sometimes we let the wrong people go. The hearing for Natalia's new lawsuit was scheduled for 6 weeks later. During that time, my life continued to improve. My software company grew to 5 employees. I rented a small but professional office. I started casually dating a graphic designer named Patricia, whom I met at a networking event. It wasn't anything serious yet, but it was refreshing to be with someone who was genuinely interested in my work and my ideas. Patricia was completely different from Natalia. She dressed casually, but with style. She preferred to dine in small restaurants with good food rather than pretentious places. And our conversations revolved around projects, ideas, and shared passions instead of luxury brands and social appearances. I hadn't told her about Natalia or the divorce in detail. I just mentioned I'd recently gotten out of a complicated marriage. One night, after dinner at a modest but delicious Thai restaurant, Patricia asked me about my app. How did you come up with the original idea? I explained that it came from a need I identified while working at my first job after college. Small and medium-sized businesses needed management tools, but they couldn't afford complex enterprise systems. I wanted to create something powerful but accessible. Patricia smiled. It's fascinating how you solved a real problem instead of just trying to make money. That simple observation made me reflect. During my marriage to Natalia, every project I undertook was evaluated by its potential for immediate income. If it didn't promise quick profits, it was dismissed as a waste of time. Patricia, on the other hand, valued the passion and purpose behind the work, not just the financial results. 2 weeks before the hearing, I received information that changed everything. My forensic accountant discovered that Rodrigo had declared personal bankruptcy. His remaining gyms were being liquidated to pay creditors. Worse yet, we discovered that Natalia had co-signed on some of Rodrigo's business loans. This meant she was now legally responsible for those debts, which totaled over $200,000. Elena leaned back in her chair when I showed her the information. Diego, this is serious. Natalia is on the verge of financial ruin. That house she got in the divorce will probably end up in foreclosure to pay Rodrigo's debts. I processed the information in silence. Part of me felt a bitter satisfaction seeing the consequences of her decisions. But another part, the one that still remembered the good early moments of our marriage, felt a twinge of pity. A week before the hearing, Natalia made a desperate move. She posted a series of posts on social media publicly accusing me of cheating her during the divorce, of hiding income, and of being a calculating sociopath who had planned his revenge from the beginning. The posts included screenshots of articles about my app and speculation about how much money I was making. The reaction from her followers was mixed. Some supported her unconditionally, calling me all sorts of names, but others, especially those who had read the article about my story, questioned her version. "Weren't you the one who cheated on him with another man?" someone wrote. "Didn't you get the house, the cars, and a generous alimony?" another added. What really turned the tide was when Camila, her former best friend, commented publicly, "Natalia, I love you, but you need to accept reality. Diego didn't steal anything from you. You chose to leave a stable marriage for someone who turned out not to be who you thought. Those were your decisions." The comment generated hundreds of reactions. Natalia immediately deleted it and blocked Camila, but the damage was done. Screenshots of the comment circulated everywhere. Patricia saw the posts. She called me that night. "Diego, I saw what your ex is posting about you. Do you want to talk about it?" I explained the whole situation for the first time. The marriage, Natalia's betrayal, the brutal divorce, the constant lawsuits. Patricia listened in silence. When I finished, she said something I didn't expect. "It sounds like she's desperate and scared. People do irrational things when they feel like they're losing control." She was right. Natalia was in a free fall, and her only strategy was to attack me as if destroying me would somehow save her. But her attacks were having the opposite effect. Every public accusation made more people investigate the full story, and in doing so, they discovered I'd been transparent from the beginning while she had built her post-divorce life on debt and lies. The night before the hearing, I couldn't sleep. I sat on my apartment balcony looking at the city lights. In less than 12 hours, I'd be in front of a judge again, defending what I'd built with my own effort. Natalia would try once more to take what wasn't hers, but this time I had something I didn't have during our marriage. Absolute clarity about who I was and what I deserved. The courtroom was more crowded than I expected. Besides the judge, the lawyers, and the parties involved, there were several journalists who had followed the story after the article about my app. Natalia arrived accompanied not only by her lawyer, but also by Rodrigo, who looked noticeably uncomfortable. She wore an elegant suit she'd probably bought with one of her maxed-out credit cards, projecting an image of success that contrasted sharply with her financial reality. The judge, the same one who had presided over the previous hearings, seemed tired of our case. "Mrs. Natalia, this is your third lawsuit related to the same divorce. I hope you have substantially different arguments than those presented previously." Natalia's lawyer stood up, clearing his throat. "Your Honor, we've discovered evidence that Mr. Diego made significant improvements to his application during the marriage using resources and time that should have been dedicated to the family. These improvements exponentially increased the value of the application. Therefore, my client is entitled to compensation." Elena stood up immediately. "Your Honor, we've already presented exhaustive evidence that any improvements made during the marriage were done in Mr. Diego's personal time, without using marital resources. Furthermore, Mrs. Natalia actively disdained this project for years." The judge raised his hand. "I've reviewed all the documentation presented by both parties. Counselor, do you have any new evidence that we haven't seen in the previous hearings?" Natalia's lawyer hesitated. "Your Honor, we request a full audit of all of Mr. Diego's income from the time of the legal separation to the present." Elena responded firmly. "Your Honor, we've already voluntarily submitted all requested financial records. This lawsuit is clearly an attempt at legal harassment against my client." The judge studied the documents in front of him for several minutes of tense silence. Finally, he looked up. "I've carefully reviewed all the evidence presented in this case and in the previous lawsuits. The records clearly show that Mr. Diego's application was developed before the marriage, that the improvements during the marriage were minimal and made in his personal time, and that all the lucrative contracts were negotiated and signed after the legal separation." Natalia leaned toward her lawyer, whispering something urgently. He shook his head. The judge continued. "Furthermore, I find the pattern of repetitive lawsuits by Mrs. Natalia to be problematic. This constitutes abuse of the legal system. He banged the gavel. The lawsuit is denied. Furthermore, I order Mrs. Natalia to refrain from filing future lawsuits related to this same matter without substantially new and verifiable evidence. Natalia stood up abruptly, her face flushed. This is an injustice. That man is stealing what's mine. The judge looked at her sternly. Ma'am, I warn you to maintain decorum in my court. If you continue with these interruptions, I'll find you in contempt. Natalia's lawyer pulled her by the arm, forcing her to sit down. Her hands were shaking visibly as she tried to hold back tears of frustration. The judge added a final comment that would resonate for weeks. Mrs. Natalia, during the divorce proceedings you received exactly what you requested, the house, the vehicles, half the savings, and a generous alimony. What Mr. Diego did with his professional life after you legally ended your relationship is none of your business. I suggest you focus on your own financial situation instead of pursuing what isn't yours. The gavel sounded again, ending the hearing. As we left the courtroom, the journalists approached. One asked for my opinion on the decision. I kept my response brief. I respect the judge's decision and hope I can finally close this chapter of my life. A journalist asked Natalia if she had anything to say. She stormed past without answering, with Rodrigo hurrying behind her. I saw her push him when he tried to take her arm, clearly taking her frustration out on him. That afternoon, Natalia posted a long, emotional message on social media about the injustice of the legal system and how manipulative men always win while honest women lose. But this time the reaction was different. Several of her followers, especially those who had followed the case, commented, pointing out the inconsistencies in her story. Weren't you the one who cheated on him with another man? Someone wrote. Didn't you get the house, the cars, and a generous alimony? Another added. What really turned the tide was when Camila, her ex-best friend, commented publicly, Natalia, I love you, but you need to accept reality. Diego didn't steal anything from you. You chose to leave a stable marriage for someone who turned out not to be who you thought. Those were your decisions. The comment generated hundreds of reactions. Natalia immediately deleted it and blocked Camila, but the damage was done. Screenshots of the comment circulated everywhere. The following days were revealing. My forensic accountant informed me that the bank had initiated foreclosure proceedings on the house. Natalia had stopped paying the mortgage for 3 months, probably using that money to keep up appearances on social media. Additionally, 2 of her credit card creditors had filed lawsuits to recover the unpaid debts. Rodrigo, facing his own financial crisis, apparently decided that Natalia was a liability he couldn't afford. According to information that came through mutual acquaintances, he had ended the relationship abruptly, leaving her alone to face the consequences of the debts she had co-signed on his business loans. Natalia posted vague messages about double betrayals and cowardly men, but no one was paying much attention anymore. A week after the final hearing, I received a call from a blocked number. I hesitated before answering, but finally picked up. It was Natalia. Her voice sounded completely different, broken, desperate. Diego, I need to talk to you. I told her that any communication should be through our lawyers. Please, she pleaded. Just 5 minutes. I beg you. Something in her tone made me agree, though I told her we'd meet in a public place with my lawyer present. We met at a cafe 2 days later. Natalia arrived without makeup, in simple clothes, looking years older than the last time I'd seen her. Elena sat beside me, ready to intervene if necessary. Natalia began to speak in a trembling voice. Diego, I know I have no right to ask you for anything. I know I did terrible things to you, but I'm desperate. They're going to take the house. I have debts of over $300,000. Rodrigo left me responsible for his business loans and disappeared. Elena shot me a warning glance, but I let her continue. I need help. I'm not asking for money. Just, I don't know. Maybe you could talk to the creditors. Tell them I didn't know what I was getting into with Rodrigo. I looked her straight in the eye. Natalia, do you remember what you told me on the day of the divorce ruling? That you hoped to see me living on the street, that I was going to know real misery. Her face crumbled. I know. I was horrible. I was angry, resentful. But please, you're not like that. You're a better person than me. Elena leaned forward. Mrs. Natalia, I understand you're in a difficult situation, but Mr. Diego has no legal or moral obligation to help you. You made conscious decisions. Cheating during the marriage, fighting aggressively in the divorce, spending irresponsibly afterward, and co-signing for business loans without investigating your partner's finances. Those were your choices. Natalia began to cry openly. I know. I've ruined everything. I thought if I got enough money from the divorce, if I showed I was fine without you, if I lived the perfect life on social media, I'd prove I'd made the right decision by leaving you. But it was all a lie. Rodrigo was a lie. My lifestyle was a lie. It was all a lie. Her sobs were genuine. The complete breakdown of someone finally facing the consequences of years of selfish decisions. I felt a complex mix of emotions. Part of me wanted to feel satisfaction seeing Natalia completely defeated, reaping exactly what she'd sown. But another part, perhaps the one that still remembered having loved her once, felt a twinge of compassion for another human being in crisis. However, the lesson learned throughout this whole process was clear. Helping Natalia now would only prolong her inability to face the reality of her actions. Natalia, I finally said, my voice firm but not cruel. I'm not going to help you financially. I'm not going to intervene with your creditors. I'm not going to rescue you from the consequences of your decisions. She looked up, hope and desperation mixed in her expression. But I'm going to give you some advice, though you probably don't want to hear it. Declare bankruptcy. Lose the house, destroy the credit cards, get a real job, no matter how modest. Build a life based on substance instead of appearances. Natalia looked at me as if I were speaking a foreign language. Bankruptcy, lose the house. How am I going to live like that? I sighed. The same way I lived after the divorce, in a simple apartment, with normal clothes, eating simple food. It's not the end of the world, Natalia. It's just the end of the illusions. She stood up abruptly, her moment of vulnerability transforming back into rage. I knew you wouldn't help me. You were always cold, calculating. That's why I cheated on you, because you could never give me what I really needed. Elena also stood up. Mrs. Natalia, this meeting is over. I suggest you seek professional help, both financial and psychological, and I remind you that you have a court order not to file any more frivolous lawsuits against my client. Natalia looked at both of us with pure hatred before storming out of the cafe. I watched her through the window, getting into her car, pounding the steering wheel in frustration before speeding off. Elena turned to me. Are you okay, Diego? I nodded slowly. Yes, it's strange, but seeing Natalia's complete destruction doesn't give me the satisfaction I thought it would. Elena smiled with understanding. That's because you're a decent person. The real victory isn't seeing others suffer, but building a better life for yourself. And that's exactly what you've done. That night, while having dinner with Patricia at her apartment, she cooking pasta while I made a salad, I realized something fundamental. This simple, domestic, collaborative scene was more valuable than all the expensive restaurants and designer clothes Natalia had valued so much. Patricia asked about my day and actually listened to my answer. We shared ideas about our projects, laughed about silly work anecdotes. We planned a weekend visiting small museums we both wanted to see. There were no cameras, no social media posts, no need to prove anything to anyone. Just two people genuinely enjoying each other's company, building something real instead of a perfectly curated illusion for public consumption. This was the true wealth that Natalia had never understood and probably never would. The following months brought significant changes for everyone involved. My software company continued to grow steadily. I hired 10 more employees, including 2 senior developers who brought innovative ideas to expand the app's capabilities. I signed a contract with a multinational corporation for $2 million to develop a customized enterprise version. My professional life was flourishing in ways I never imagined during my marriage with Natalia. Patricia and I made our relationship official. There was no big announcement on social media or ostentatious celebrations. We simply decided to move in together into a larger apartment that could serve as a home and workspace for both of us. She had sold her stake in the design agency, where she worked to start her own independent studio. We often worked together, she designing interfaces for my applications while I developed the back-end functionality. It was a genuine collaboration based on mutual respect and shared passions. One Saturday afternoon, while Patricia and I were shopping at the supermarket, I ran into Natalia in the cleaning products aisle. She looked unrecognizable. Her hair, once always perfectly styled, was pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore worn-out jeans and a no-brand t-shirt. She had generic products in her cart, carefully calculating prices on her phone. When our eyes met, I saw pure shame in hers. "Diego," she said quietly. Patricia, sensing the tension, excused herself to get something we'd forgotten, giving me space. "Natalia, how are you?" She let out a bitter laugh. "How do you think? I lost the house like you predicted. I declared bankruptcy. I live in a one-room apartment on the cheap side of town. I work as an administrative assistant earning $2,500 a month." Her voice trembled slightly. I noticed that her hands, once always adorned with a flawless manicure and expensive rings, were now bare and showed signs of manual labor. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said honestly. She shook her head. "Don't be sorry. You were right about everything you said. I lived in a fantasy, spending money I didn't have, chasing an empty lifestyle. It all came crashing down exactly as you warned it would." There was a moment of awkward silence. Finally, Natalia spoke again. "I saw the article about your company in the business magazine. $2 million in contracts. You must be very proud." There was no sarcasm in her voice, only resignation. "I've worked hard," I replied simply. She nodded. "I know. You always worked hard. I just never valued it. I thought your work was just a means to give me the life I wanted. I never understood that for you. It was your passion, your purpose." Patricia returned with a carton of milk. Natalia glanced at her briefly. "Your girlfriend?" I nodded. "Patricia, this is Natalia." Patricia extended her hand politely. "Nice to meet you." Natalia shook her hand, studying her. I saw in Natalia's eyes the recognition of everything she wasn't. Patricia didn't wear designer clothes or pretentious jewelry, but she radiated a genuine confidence and warmth that Natalia had never possessed. "I have to go," Natalia said abruptly. "My shift at work starts in an hour." She walked away, pushing her cart of generic groceries. An image completely opposite to the woman who once swore to see me fall into misery. Patricia took my hand. "That was your ex-wife, right?" I nodded. "Yes." Things didn't end well for her. Patricia squeezed my hand. "Decisions have consequences." She chose her path. That night, as we prepared dinner together in our apartment, I reflected on the encounter with Natalia. I didn't feel joy at her downfall or satisfaction at her suffering. Instead, I felt a kind of closure. Seeing Natalia working honestly, living within her means, facing reality for the first time in years, was in some ways more meaningful than any apology she could have offered. 2 weeks later, I received an unexpected email from Natalia. The subject line was simply belated apology. The message was brief but sincere. "Diego, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness or your time, but I need to say this. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I cheated on you. I'm sorry I was so cruel during the divorce. I'm sorry I legally harassed you afterward. I'm sorry I didn't value what we had when we had it." I don't expect a reply. I just needed you to know. I'm trying to be a better person. It's hard, but for the first time in my life, I'm being honest with myself about who I was and who I want to be. I wish you the best, sincerely. I showed the email to Patricia. She read it carefully. "Are you going to reply?" I thought for a moment. "Yes, but briefly." I wrote a short reply. "Natalia, I accept your apology. I wish you success on your path to becoming who you want to be. Take care." I pressed send and closed that chapter for good. My company continued to grow exponentially. 6 months after the supermarket encounter, I received an offer to buy my application from a major tech corporation. The offer was for $15 million. Elena reviewed the contract meticulously. "Diego, this is life-changing. This amount of money can change your life and your family's forever." Patricia and I discussed the offer for weeks. She fully supported me in whatever decision I made. I finally decided to accept the offer on the condition that I could maintain a consulting role in the future development of the app. The corporation agreed. The day the contract was signed, $15 million was transferred to my bank account. It was a sum I never imagined having, especially after leaving the divorce with practically nothing but my laptop and my clothes. Patricia and I celebrated discreetly at our favorite Thai restaurant, the same modest place where we'd had our first date. You know what's the most ironic thing about all this? I told her as we shared pad thai. "What?" Natalia spent years chasing wealth and status. She took everything she could in the divorce thinking it would give her the life she wanted, and now she's broke, working a basic job. Meanwhile, I, who was supposedly going to fall into misery, just sold my app for $15 million. Patricia smiled. "It's not ironic, it's justice." You built something real with hard work and genuine passion. She chased illusions and appearances. The universe simply gave each of you what you deserved. We raised our glasses of modest wine and toasted, not to Natalia's downfall, but to the future Patricia and I were building together, based on honesty, mutual respect, and shared values. I used part of the money from the sale to establish a scholarship fund for engineering students from low-income families. I named it in honor of my grandmother, who had partly raised me and always believed in my potential, even when no one else did. The first scholarship award ceremony was emotional. Seeing talented young people receive opportunities they otherwise wouldn't have had reminded me why I had pursued my dream in the first place. Not for money or status, but to make a difference. Patricia and I bought a modest but comfortable house in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't ostentatious or designed to impress anyone. It was a true home where we could work, create, and eventually start a family. The day we moved in, while unpacking boxes, Patricia found an old photo of me and Natalia from our wedding day. She looked at me questioningly. Should we keep it? I shook my head. No, that chapter's over. I'm ready to write a new one. 6 months later, I proposed to Patricia during a walk in the woods, with no expensive ring or elaborate setting, just a sincere promise to build a life together based on genuine love and mutual respect. She said yes, with tears in her eyes. We planned a small, intimate wedding, with only close family and true friends. There would be no inflated guest lists to impress people we didn't care about. There would be no extravagant expenses to create the illusion of perfection on social media. A week before the wedding, I got a message from Camila, Natalia's ex-friend who had warned me about her desperate plans months ago. Diego, I thought you'd want to know. Natalia is seeing a therapist now. She's really working on her problems. I don't know if she'll ever be completely different, but at least she's trying. I just thought you'd like to know. I thanked her for the information. I was glad to know Natalia was seeking genuine help. On my wedding day with Patricia, as I watched her walk toward me in a simple but beautiful dress, with a radiant smile and eyes full of real love, I thought briefly of Natalia. I wondered if she would ever find what she had really been looking for all her life. Not material wealth or social media validation, but genuine connection, meaningful purpose, and inner peace. I silently wished that for her. Then I turned my full attention to Patricia and the future we were about to begin together. 2 years after my wedding to Patricia, my life had reached a balance I never thought possible. Our joint venture, a fusion of my software development with her design studio, employed 30 people and generated steady income without the pressure of unsustainable growth. We had bought a small cabin in the mountains, where we spent weekends disconnected from the digital world, simply enjoying nature and each other's company. Patricia was pregnant with our first daughter. Unlike my marriage with Natalia, where every decision was based on how it would look on the outside, Patricia and I made decisions based on what we really wanted. We decorated the baby's room ourselves with furniture we assembled together and paintings she created. There were no expensive designers or professional photographers documenting every moment to post on social media. We were just two excited people preparing to welcome our daughter. One Saturday morning, while Patricia and I were having breakfast at our favorite cafe, Natalia walked in. I almost didn't recognize her. She wore professional but modest clothes. Her hair was in a practical cut, and she walked with a posture that reflected determination rather than the arrogance that used to characterize her. She saw us and hesitated for a moment before approaching. Diego, Patricia, I'm sorry to interrupt, she said in a calm voice. I just wanted to say hello. Patricia, always kind, offered her a seat with us. Natalia politely declined. I don't want to bother you. I just wanted you to know that I graduated from an accounting program at the community college. I got a job as a junior accountant at a small firm. It's not glamorous, but it's honest and I'm proud of it. I looked at her with genuine surprise. That's excellent, Natalia. Congratulations. She smiled, a real smile without pretensions. I've also been in therapy for a year. I've learned a lot about why I made the decisions I made, about how I confused material value with personal value. I can't change the past, but I'm building a different future, she noticed Patricia's belly. Congratulations on the baby. You'll be great parents. Patricia thanked her warmly. Thanks, that means a lot. Natalia continued. Diego, I want you to know that I finally understand what you were trying to tell me for years. It's not about the money or appearances. It's about building something real, something with purpose. I wasted years chasing illusions, but I guess some people need to fall completely to learn how to get up properly. There was a moment of silence before she added, I'm dating someone. He's an elementary school teacher. He earns less than I do now, which is ironic considering what I used to value. But he's kind, patient, genuine. He makes me laugh. We don't have perfect photos on social media or extravagant outings. We just have real conversations and simple moments. And for the first time in my life, that's enough. Patricia and I exchanged glances. I'm glad to hear you're doing well, Natalia, I said sincerely. She nodded. Well, I'll let you enjoy your breakfast. I just wanted you to know that I'm okay, that I'm finally learning to be okay. She walked away, and I watched her through the window get into a modest car, looking more at peace than I had ever seen her during our marriage. Patricia took my hand across the table. That was unexpected, but good. She seems genuinely different. I nodded. People can change when they're willing to do the hard work. Natalia finally stopped blaming others and took responsibility. That's admirable. Patricia smiled. Speaking of changes, the baby just kicked. I think she approves of this restaurant as much as we do. 3 months later, our daughter Elena was born. We named her after my lawyer, who had not only defended me legally, but had also become a close friend. Elena came to the hospital to meet her namesake, bringing a teddy bear and tears of joy. Diego, life has funny ways of balancing things, right? 3 years ago, you were losing everything in a brutal divorce. Now look where you are. Holding my daughter in the hospital with Patricia asleep after the delivery and Elena sitting beside me, I reflected on the entire journey. From discovering Natalia's infidelity to the devastating divorce, from rebuilding my life in a tiny apartment to selling my app for millions, from legal harassment to finding true love with Patricia. Every painful moment had been necessary to lead me exactly where I was meant to be. You know what's the strangest thing of all, Elena? I said to my lawyer. I don't feel anything negative toward Natalia anymore. There's no resentment or satisfaction about how it all ended. There's just gratitude because her betrayal forced me to rebuild myself in a way I never would have if we'd stayed married. Elena smiled wisely. That's the sign you've truly healed. Not when you want revenge or when you magnanimously forgive, but when you can simply see the past as part of your story without emotional baggage. The next 2 years passed in a beautiful blur of sleepless nights, first words, first steps, and the lovely chaos that comes with being first-time parents. Patricia and I took turns working from home, coordinating our schedules to maximize time with Elena. Our company continued to grow, but we refused to sacrifice family moments for professional success. We'd seen enough of that mistake in my first marriage. One day, Camila contacted me with news about Natalia. I thought you'd want to know, Diego. Natalia married Roberto, the school teacher. It was a small ceremony in his parents' garden. I saw the pictures. She looks really happy. Genuinely happy. Not that forced happiness she used to post on social media. I was genuinely happy for her. That's wonderful. We all deserve second chances when we really do the work to change. 5 years after my divorce, while we celebrated Elena's 3rd birthday in our backyard with close friends and family, I looked around and saw real wealth, not measured in bank accounts or properties, but in genuine laughter, warm hugs, people who cared for each other without hidden agendas. Patricia handed me our second child, 6-month-old Mateo, while Elena ran around chasing bubbles with her cousins. My mother, who had always distrusted Natalia during our marriage, hugged me. My son, I always knew you were destined for better things. Natalia never deserved you, but Patricia does. And these children, these beautiful children, are your true fortune. She was right. I'd started with $15 million from the sale of my app, but that paled in comparison to the wealth of having a loving family, a true partner, and a life built on real values instead of illusions. The story of the divorce and my recovery occasionally came up in conversations with other entrepreneurs. Many asked if I regretted anything. My answer was always the same. I don't regret the marriage to Natalia or the divorce. Both taught me crucial lessons. The marriage taught me what I don't want in a relationship. The divorce taught me my own strength and resilience. And losing everything taught me how to build something better. I occasionally saw Natalia's posts on social media through mutual friends. They were completely different. Now photos of her and Roberto in public parks, cooking together at home, working on volunteer projects, captions about gratitude, personal growth, and second chances. There were no more luxury brands or calculated poses, just a woman who had finally found peace in authenticity. One afternoon, years later, while working in my home office, I received an email from Natalia. The subject line said, "A belated thank you." The message was brief. "Diego, I know it's been years and you'll probably never read this, but I need to say it. Thank you for not rescuing me when I hit rock bottom. Thank you for letting me face the consequences of my actions. It was the best thing anyone could have done for me. It forced me to grow in ways I never would have if you had saved me. I'm in a good place now, finally. And a large part of that is because you let me fall completely so I could learn to stand on my own. I hope you're well. I know you are. You were always the strong one of the two. It just took me a long time to see it." I showed the email to Patricia. She smiled with understanding. "Are you going to reply?" I thought for a moment. I don't need to. That message was for her, not for me. She needed to express that for her own healing. My response or lack thereof doesn't change anything. Patricia nodded. "Exactly. You've closed that chapter completely. You no longer live in reaction to Natalia or the past. You live your own life fully. Today, when I look back, I see the full arc of the story. Natalia took everything in the divorce and swore to see me fall into misery, but in doing so, she unknowingly freed me. She freed me from a superficial relationship, from the pressure of keeping up appearances, from living someone else's life. And in that freedom, I built something far more valuable than anything I lost. True fortune wasn't reborn because I recovered money or status. It was reborn because I learned to value the right things. Genuine connections over appearances, purpose over possessions, character over bank accounts. Natalia thought she was stripping me of my wealth. In reality, she was forcing me to discover where my value truly resided. And now, sitting in my home office, listening to Patricia read stories to our children in the other room, knowing that my company helps genuine businesses, that my scholarship fund is changing lives, that my marriage is based on real love and not convenience, I can honestly say, Natalia was right about one thing. My fortune was indeed reborn, just not in the way she could have ever imagined or understood. Have you ever faced a devastating loss that later turned out to be the best gift? Have you had to rebuild your life from scratch only to discover that what you built was infinitely better than what you lost? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Sometimes the greatest betrayals lead us to our greatest triumphs. Thanks for joining me on this journey. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next story.